You know that character I pulled like all of 2019? Time to pull her out. It's floor 93, boys. How's it going, guys? This is Arcadin, and today we're going to talk through floor 93. All in all, a pretty doable level. It's not crazy. You're going to be fighting against Dominiel and Blue Zerato. Dominiel being the main boss, and it's a relatively easy rotation. The big thing will be, do you have characters that don't debuff? So let's take a look at the team composition that we decided to go with, and then I'm going to tell you a few different things you can do to kind of change it up completely if you don't have these particular units. So let's kick it off with our DPS unit, who is by far the MVP for this particular floor. As you can see, I have Commander Lorina here. I went through and did the specialty change a long time ago. She's a free-to-play unit, so you can build her up really easy. I don't have incredibly amazing gear on her, as well as you'll notice. I don't even have her fully mullet, or at this point even stigma'd out, because I didn't have all of the catalysts that I needed. So I ended up doing +5, which is like maxed out on the S3, but otherwise, like, I have a lot of extra damage that I'm missing on the S1, as well as getting some extra attack on S2. I don't even have her in the best place she could be by any stretch. I also have like a +12 chest piece here. Big things you want to make sure that her speed is at least over 150. Just because she's got to at least take some turns. But the reality is she's going to be pushing herself with combat readiness. You want to have 100% on your crit hit chance, crit hit damage as much as you can get, and then of course as much attack as you can get from there, because she is your damage dealer. I chose Uberius's Tooth here as our artifact. Daydream Joker will just not work here, because normal Zerato ends up putting a passive out on himself, which then also transitions over to Dominiel, that makes it so that you can't do percentage damage to the boss. So Green Bologna is going to struggle here, same at least with getting extra damage. She's going to struggle, as well as putting a Daydream Joker on any of your DPS. Uberius's Tooth is just an incredible artifact, just being able to utilize it the same way you might use Drink if you were using a Ranger. Basically the same idea. Next up, I chose Luna. Everybody loves Luna. Unfortunately, right now in the game, she's not like terribly useful for a whole bunch of other things, but what she does do well is good single target damage, especially if you're like me and you have +15 in her as far as moles go. So anytime I get an excuse to use this character, we're gonna do it. But do you need the character? No. She does very similar stuff to what Commander Lorina would do in damage, as far as like, you're not landing debuffs as long as you don't use the S3. So don't use the S3 on Luna at all. But as long as you don't, you're doing heavy hitting single target damage. Luna's S2, when you have a whole bunch of molas in it, makes it so that we're gaining like 30% attack as well as 30% crit hit chance. So you'll notice I have like 67% here. That's like 97% based on just being the character and how many molas we have in her. So she actually is fine. She does plenty of damage here, which you'll see when we actually get into the fight. But realistically, you don't have to have both of these characters to be able to do this. In fact, a lot of people, it may take a few minutes longer to beat the fight, will only use either Luna or Commander Lorina, and actually use 3 healers, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. Next up are our healer options. I decided probably the safest one you could pick for this would be Angelic Montmorancy. I used Magaraha's Tome. I don't necessarily think that's actually worth it. I think she would have done better using something like Rod or something that healed a little bit more, but whatever. We cycled through turns pretty quick with the combat readiness push. We ended up getting more than enough healing, and at one point I think we had to burn the S3 one time, but it was mostly because I'm using 2 healers two healers instead of 3 healers, and those 2 DPS are a little bit squishy, so we got into like one spot that was even kind of a little bit weird. But for the most part, she's incredible because she's going to get all of the debuffs off with her S2 and her S3. She's able to cleanse very easily, as well as her healing output is just insane. Not to mention the fact that with Angelic Montmorancy, we talk about this sometimes, but it's important to note, she does build well with a lot of effect resist, and so she actually just kind of ignores a lot of the debuffs that hit her sometimes. So she's kind of a great healer for healing off other healers and getting other debuffs off of the other healers more often than not if they don't have as much effect resist. So Angelic Montmo, solid choice. Finally, for the last of the 4 characters that we have on this team, we did put Tamarin in. She obviously does have elemental disadvantage, but the reality is, as a healer, there's really almost no one that can top her in PvE content. She gets to give an attack buff. She has the ability to dual attack. She can cleanse off everybody's debuffs when she morphs into S3. She can also strip off buffs off of the boss. Literally everything. I think the most important thing being the combat readiness push and the healing that she does on the S3, as well as giving the attack buff. Those are going to be the biggest things for this one. Didn't matter. I didn't put her up front because I didn't want her to take maximum damage, but like just by having her in there, just incredible secondary healer, and you'll see her just do some insane work when we get in here. I would say that you could probably get away with doing this with also maybe Destina. You could probably also bring a Katie's to cycle S3, S2 for also some cleanses, but the only thing you're missing there is you're not going to get the attack buff. So it's possible also if you go with a 3 healer aspect to be able to, wow. It's possible also if you have a 3 healer aspected group that you could bring in Diane. Diane would also be really solid to give you an attack buff as well as just some crit reduction buffs as well. So lots of heals, lots of shielding. Super, super good. But I do think Tamarin takes the cake here. So let's take a look and see what it feels like to do 2 damage dealers and 2 healers as opposed to 1 damage dealer and 3 healers. Jumping straight into phase 1, we're going to go directly for the Dusk Dream Leech. There's almost no need to go after the other 3 mobs there. They will do a lot of damage. You'll notice like both my Luna and I believe my Lorina take a good chunk of damage when they do get hit, which could be a little bit scary, and you might get RNG'd if they happen to get hit multiple times, but that's why you would never put a damage dealer up front. You would try and put like a tankier unit up front to be able to absorb more damage. You may get luckier, you may get more unlucky, you might just have to try it again. It's fine either way. But you are going to spend most of your time on the Dusk Dream Leech. So you'll notice I don't mind using S3 on Luna in phase 1. It's totally fine. Having debuffs hit the boss is completely reasonable, and the boss in this case is just kind of a mini, so it's no big deal. So you could auto this, you could manual it. You'll notice I do manual it just because I don't want any of my DPS to actually die. But the phase goes very, very quickly and leads directly into phase 2. Don't worry about collecting too many souls for Arky because Arky will not be really that necessary for this fight. Moving into phase 2, we're going to be dealing with Dominiel and Zerato. Dominiel is the main boss, and Zerato is sort of like an extra target to hit in this particular boss. So you don't actually have to kill him. Dominiel will actually end the fight if you finish her health pool. So the reason we've chosen the characters that we have for this fight is basically because Dominiel has several different abilities that need to be talked through. Number 1 is her S1, which is when the caster's health is 70% or less, the number of targets she'll hit with her S2 is increased to 3, meaning it starts at 100% with only hitting 2, 70% it will hit 3 targets, and at 40% or less, it will actually hit all 4 characters on your team. So that's just good to know. Her S2 is Hail, throws an ice fragment at 2 enemies, transferring all debuffs inflicted on the caster with a 25% chance to provoke for 1 turn. This is basically saying, hey, don't bring debuffs. As long as you don't debuff the Dominiel at all, you'll be set and there will be no problems there. You'll still have the chance that it will provoke when she does use an S2, but you won't be getting like throwing S2s all the time necessarily. So not a huge deal. Plus we do have Montmorancy and Tamarin to be able to get rid of those provokes as they happen. And then finally her S3 attacks all enemies with a large block of ice, inflicting stackable decreased defense, as well as it will summon a dead ally. So knowing that it will actually re-summon a dead ally lets you know that you really don't need to finish or even fight Zerato at all. Reading quickly through Zerato's abilities, he basically has the ability to decrease speed on multiple people. He also has the ability to stun people as well. And the biggest thing that he shares with Dominiel is the Nixie's Grace, which is unaffected by increase in damage proportional to max health. So that's why Daydream Joker does not work here super well. And it also says that unaffected by combat readiness reduction effects. So if you had something where you were trying to speed yourself up by basically knocking the boss's combat readiness backwards, you couldn't actually do that. So you can still combat readiness push yourself, you just can't actually decrease the boss. Other things that you might want to note and that you might see that are happening in the fight are Dominiel has a 20% chance to activate Hail, which is her S2, when she's attacked. That effect is increased to 100%, so increased by 80%, but it goes up to 100% when the caster is debuffed. So as long as you're not debuffing Dominiel, you only have a 20% chance to actually be rebuttaled on by an S2 or a Hail from Dominiel, which would transfer those debuffs back over to your characters as well as have a chance to provoke. The other thing to really think about with this is just basically, who am I hitting, and am I giving myself the maximum amount of chances to not get rebuttaled upon? So you'll notice that in this fight, basically we spend the entire time fighting with Luna and with Lorina when it comes to hitting Dominiel. Make sure again on Luna, don't use the S3 because getting a defense break will actually just be the worst here. You really don't want to deal with that at all, so just don't. But otherwise, the two healers, if they're not healing and they have to use an S1, they'll end up just S1ing directly into Zerato because there's no reason to have a chance to actually proc a counterattack back from Dominiel if you're not going to do real legitimate damage. So all of my healers are focused on just hitting Zerato if they're not healing, and we're spending the rest of the time DPSing Dominiel one hit at a time with our single target damage dealers. If you go through this fight and you don't have any damage debuffs and you make sure that you're always hitting the right target on Dominiel, you'll notice that basically is a walk in the park. You're going to be able to easily heal yourself through. You're easily able to kind of take each individual stage as it goes. There are a couple times that you'll notice where our health gets a little bit low as Dominiel gets down into her like 40% and they all start getting hit. Which is where a safety precaution may be worth having, which would be like 3 healers instead of just the 2. But honestly, we really didn't have too many chances of that really being a problem because there's just so many opportunities to heal with 2 healers already that as long as you're focusing in the right times, you shouldn't have any trouble. That's basically this fight, guys. As long as you don't have debuffs and you're making sure that you're putting your damage into the right people and you have the ability to cleanse off all the debuffs as well as they come back to you, you're set. No problems at all. So that's it, guys. Enjoy your new level 88 piece of gear. Feels super, super good to be done with another floor. If you guys really enjoyed this content or going through Abyss floors at all, make sure you guys drop a like. Feel free to comment. We'd love to hear from you. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see you guys join us here in our community. So love you guys. We'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Peace, dudes.